will start shortly.
I'd like to welcome our witnesses and thank them for joining us today. Just to say that a transcript of the meeting will be taken and published on the committee's website, and you will have the opportunity to make corrections to the transcript where necessary. I must start by saying that we're obliged to all declare our interests as members of the committee, as this is our first public session and we haven't done so before. And my interests are declared on the Lord's Register of Interests, but for the purposes of you knowing right now, they are that I'm chairman of Access Creative College, which is an independent provider of specialist training and further education for the creative industries. I'm a board member of the Dyson Institute for Engineering and Technology, and I'm chairman of FutureLearn, which is a digital learning platform. I'm also President's Professorial Fellow at King's College London. So other members, I think, will declare their interest when they first speak, I think, going forward. So we don't need to go around the room and take time doing that now. But I wanted to kick off, if I could, by asking you each to introduce yourself briefly and then to respond to an initial question from me, which is to explain how your school or college differs from that of others, how your approach differs from that of other schools and colleges, and why you've chosen to do things differently. So, Carolyn Roberts from Prince's Teaching Institute, may I please start with you?
Thank you. My name's Carolyn Roberts. I'm head teacher of Thomas Tallis School in Greenwich. I've been there for 10 years. I've been a head teacher for 22 years. It's my third headship. I'm also about one day a week co-director of the Prince's the organisation which was formerly called the Prince's Teaching Institute, which is a curriculum development charity which offers top-level subject training and support for ordinary schools. My own school is a very large school, so about 2,100 young people, 11 to 18, comprehensive school. And the school has a long history of a commitment to creativity and the arts. But our real curriculum commitment for the 11 to 16 school is to a very broad and balanced curriculum. So our young people in Key Stage 3 do all of the national curriculum subjects, but also an hour a week each of dance, drama, music, art and DT. We offer 27 GCSE courses, and when the children move on to the sixth form, we offer 26 A-levels and 6 B-Techs. We can do that because we are a really large school. But our commitment is to keeping all of the pathways and the doors open to young people. We don't sweat particular subjects. We make sure that they have the basics that they need, of course, but what we want is for each young person to find their skill, to find what they can make as a contribution to society. Our school motto is education to understand the world and change it for the better, and we want all of our young people to find their way of changing it for the better, whether that's going to university or whether that's going into the world of work.
Thank you very much. Jamie Portman.
Hi, I'm Jamie Portman. I'm the former principal of XP School and XP East in Doncaster. I work across our XP Trust now, across all our secondary schools and primary schools. We do things slightly differently from most schools in England. We design our curriculum around expeditions. We are deliberately sized schools, which means we are only 250 in our secondary schools. For every one place that we have about 10 applications. The expeditions that we do are interdisciplinary. So our entire curriculum is taught via expeditions that might have a blend of history, English, geography, science, the arts. And we design those around really purposeful and authentic learning experiences, which are all designed around final products. Now, the final products aim to address issues within our community or across the wider world. So that might be, the students might demonstrate their learning by publishing a book, or creating artwork, or doing a performance. And we curate that work locally in the community. So you can find our work in shopping centres, artwork in prisons, in parks, and we address local issues concerning social justice, diversity and belonging, and it is an activist curriculum which is designed to make the world a better place, no matter how small that might be. Our work's also underpinned by our students go on field work for their expeditions. They are largely based in school, but if we're learning about rivers, we'll go to Edale and we'll measure the velocity of rivers. And we also do that with experts from different businesses in Doncaster who support our students' learning by the expertise that they have. It's a real privilege to work for the Trust.
Thank you very much. Kate Ambrosi from the Baker of Dorking Trust.
Thank you. So my name's Kate Ambrosi and I work for the Baker of Dorking Trust, but perhaps more importantly for the 46 UTCs plus one sleeve, which we'll come back to at a later point. So UTCs are schools with a technical focus. They, at Key Stage 4, which we're interested in the most today, they will spend around 40% of their time on that technical focus. We have 4 major specialisms, or perhaps 5, engineering, digital, science, media and health. The UTCs were set up by Lord Baker and the Baker of Dorking Trust, but in their local areas by a group of employers and a university who had identified a skills gap. The schools around them were not preparing young people for the jobs that they had available. These are sustainable jobs with great futures, and they felt that the schools around them weren't meeting their needs. So they worked together to build a university technical college. We have, as I said, 47 of them around the country, serving nearly 20,000 young people. The oldest one is now 12 years old. The youngest is in Doncaster, and it is just 3 years old. We have many more who are oversubscribed now than we have in the past, but on average, there are about 450 students in size, purposely smaller than a big comprehensive, in order to create a business-like environment to nurture those skills and ensure that they get the business contact that we feel is so valuable to them. One of the main differences, therefore, is that there are 47, that there are 20,000 students working in that same area, and that they're working with over 400 businesses. So with big businesses such as BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce and Siemens, with the NHS, 40 different NHS trusts across the country, with GCHQ on cyber skills, meeting the needs of those businesses, and students are going either straight there, so with 24% going into apprenticeships on leaving, or going via university, and we have about 50% doing that, and then there are employment options available too. So really innovative schools doing really interesting project-based learning across these very important sectors.
Thank you very much. Mark Morandi.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Mark Miranda. I'm the principal of the Petersfield School in Hampshire. We're part of the Bohunt Education Trust, and we are a collection of 8 schools educating just over 11,000 students in the south of England. I work in an executive head teacher capacity, supporting other schools in our trust as well. At the Bohunt Education Trust, we are really passionate about having the highest expectations built on an ethos of enjoy, respect and achieve that goes through everything we do to create game changers. And I'll just talk a little bit about what game changers are, our definition of that. We mean students who not only have the knowledge, the skills and the qualifications to flourish, but also the self-confidence and the moral imperative to question what is around them and seek to change things for the better. And that's at the heart of what we do. And the way I'd say we're different to other schools is that outdoor education and outdoor learning is at the absolute centre of our curriculum. All of our schools have outdoor classrooms, and we have a central team that is 6 members of staff now that are outdoor learning professionals and experts who go around and ensure that every child in our Multi-Ed Academy Trust has a really meaningful outdoor learning experience as part of their curriculum. Not a one-off, not a single-day event, but something that they come back to frequently and regularly, because we believe passionately in the benefits of outdoor learning and outdoor engagement. We're in the process of purchasing our own patch of woodland to allow more outdoor opportunities for our students as well. And we're also big believers in interdisciplinary learning. So we have subject directors in all of the main subjects in the school, and they work together to create interdisciplinary, cross-curricular opportunities for our students, again, built into the heart of the curriculum. So not an add-on, not a drop-down day, but something that all of the students will experience and really get a lot of value from. And that's what we do.
Great, thank you very much. Perhaps we might just start off by asking you to explain how your approach equips your learners, your students, for the world of work. Who wants to kick off with a quick thought about the world of work specifically?
Perhaps I could. So UTCs are specifically set up to prepare young people for the world of work, not making them go down one particular path. So that's an important point. Whatever they learn through their engineering courses, for example, can be applied in many different sectors. We'd all agree, I'm sure, that engineers are widely skilled and not narrowly skilled. They join most UTCs at 14, though we have 12 that have a year 9, and now we have 6 that have a year 7 and are working up from there. The working day of a good UTC starts a little earlier than a normal school, ends a little later, so they're used to, by the time they finish, they're used to that longer day. Within that day, they spend lots of time with employers, either through the curriculum itself, and through projects, for example, and project-based learning, or through additional enrichment activities, or a combination of them both. So they do careers just as everyone else does. They do mock interviews, but they work with employers on a really regular basis, so they're very much used to working with them and doing exciting things. They're also used to working in teams. So, for example, we have a project which is with DSTL, so they're the scientists and technologists behind the Ministry of Defence, and they design a moon base for Jupiter's second moon. They work in a team to do that, so it's a team of engineers, but they must know about humans because it's a one-way trip. So they need to build the team, they need to feed the people, they need to keep them alive on the Jupiter's second moon. And they work on that with space scientists. So they learn from the space scientists, they learn about routes and our space industry. But they also learn about how teams form and how you need to entertain and, as I said, feed the people involved. They also use 3D printing and CAD and CAM to design the spaceship and the module for the planet. So they're learning with employers how to be team players, about how to be independent. They work on this project over a period of time, and they do a presentation not just to the space scientists but also to the rest of the UTCs involved, because we do that presentation remotely on Zoom. So they get to see what the other UTCs can do as well, and that acts to build the community and help them to understand they're part of a broader population who hopefully they'll later meet at work or at university. So really working with employers day in, day out, thousands of hours of activity at UTCs gives them that opportunity to feel comfortable in that environment. We do take them out, it's not all remote, they do spend lots of time out in industry, on work placements, absolutely, but also doing projects and exploring different industries so they can make those really informed decisions when they come to the end of their GCSEs. So lots of personal skill development, but also really making them more aware so they can make really informed decisions.
Great, thank you, Kate. Carolyn.
Yes, we embed readiness for the world of work in the curriculum that we offer. And so we make sure that each subject department has an external link with an appropriate area of employment, so that's embedded in the Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 curriculum. We also have a lot of employer engagement and careers engagement in 2 or 3 special events during the year, and we try to make sure that whenever we're looking at whenever we're looking at a particular overarching issue, which we do quite a lot in schools. So, for example, this year's Black History Month work was focused on careers, and so we had panels of black and minority ethnic people who were in interesting jobs coming in to talk to the young people, and we did that again and again. When we were doing International Women's Day work, we were talking about women in IT, for example. But I think that the most important thing that we do to prepare young people for the world of work is to make sure that they have the habits of mind and the learning dispositions to question, to investigate, to collaborate, and to carry on thinking and redrafting work again and again until it's right, and that's all based around our habits-related pedagogy, which we embed. You may be interested to know that that doing work experience is really quite difficult in schools. It's expensive for a start. It's also inequitable in that the number of the number of placements available to young people is small. That means that young people who've got reach within their own households can get interesting work experience, even here. But young people who don't end up going to other schools, and it's inequitable. It's not worthwhile. So we don't do that.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Carolyn Roberts. Jamie Portman or Mark Miranda? Jamie.
I think it's a really important question that you raised, particularly in the context in why we're meeting here today, because I'm not sure if all of our schools are really preparing students for the world of work, and I don't think that's their fault either. I think we'll get on to the purpose of GCSEs and why they are there, but we're really passionate that we're wanting to do things differently in our schools, because I'm not sure if the purpose of education in this country is really working. So we follow the national curriculum. That's important to us. The breadth and depth of the national curriculum is absolutely what we follow. But in terms of our curriculum, of how we facilitate that, our students really have to step up on a number of different levels. So at the end of every expedition, and we have 3 in every year group every year, our students have to present their learning in front of a live audience. That's sometimes their parents, it's members of the business community, it's whoever has been invited. And when you step up, we feel as though students realise that they are capable of so much more. If I'd have gone to school knowing that my auntie daughter, my Uncle Tony would come and see me present my learning, I might have worked hard at school, but I didn't particularly work hard. In order to do that, you've got to really show courage, and you've got to ensure that your work is of such that it contains craftsmanship and quality. And those threads of courage and craftsmanship and showing integrity are what we do every day in our schools. They aren't just platitudes. When we talk to our students in what we call crew, those competencies and those character traits really come alive. We work alongside, as I've mentioned, experts from the local businesses. So when we've done an expedition on the heritage of Doncaster's railways, we go to Wabtec, and Wabtec come to us. When we're learning about rail development, we go to the Hitachi rail factory where they are building trains for HS2. So they learn about engineering there, and that's how we do careers. And when you see a 12 or 13-year-old stood by one of the newer Zuma trains, that's when they really begin to wonder if engineering is for them, and they often do think engineering is for them. We also do a process called passage. So midway through year 9, before students do their GCSEs, we invite employers and parents and people like myself, senior members of the XP Trust, and they sit as a panel like this, and students have to articulate why do they feel that they are ready to do their GCSEs. They articulate themselves as a writer, as a mathematician, as a historian, as a scientist. And that then really is another way in which they have to step up, and they have to articulate themselves. There is almost nowhere to hide. And then finally I want to talk about how there is real authenticity in the work that we're doing. I'm not sure if the narrow pursuit of pure academic success is going to enable our students and young people to flourish within not just the wider work, but in Britain in 2023 and wider 21st century Britain. And to summarise, that's why our schools aren't just about academic success. They are, but they're also about beautiful work, which our students create, and it's also about character growth.
Thank you very much. Mark Moran.
Thank you. So we also follow the national curriculum, but we aim to go considerably beyond the demands of the national curriculum to give our students a real experience that they can take into the workplace. Because we recognise that from the present examination system, it only examines quite a narrow section of their abilities. And so we really want to look at what employers want as well, and look at things like the 4 C's: collaboration, creative thinking, critical thinking and communication, and look at how we can build those into our curriculum. And we do that in a number of different ways. We've worked with employers in our local area, including Surrey Satellites, around creating a STEM programme of study curriculum that actually develops the skills that employers are looking for. Because it's all very well for us as teachers to kind of, guess what employers are looking for, but much better to actually ask them, what skills and attributes are you looking for in the employees that you're going to be, employing in the very near future? We push a lot through the outdoor education, which I talked about in my previous answer, but we're a Duke of Edinburgh award, own operating authority. So it's something we have an aspiration for all of our students to complete that award. Because when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to teamwork, that is an outstanding way of demonstrating that. And there's so many things you just cannot learn in a traditional classroom. You need to be out in the field to do that and really experience it. So we try and make sure that all of our students have that opportunity. And coming to the point about equity, that is a challenge, because some of these things are not cheap opportunities to do. So we try our very best to make sure that is never a barrier for our students. And we fund these opportunities and make sure that students from disadvantaged backgrounds have as much access to them as students from more advantaged backgrounds as well.
Great, thank you very much. Baroness Garden.
Thank you. I'm Sue Garden and I have no interest to declare. I think your schools sound wonderful. I wish I'd been to one of them or indeed ever taught in one of them. And I wanted to ask you about teachers, because we read today about the acute shortage of teachers, particularly I think physics gets quoted often, but in my own field of modern languages I know again there's a huge shortage and the numbers applying for teacher training have gone right down. So to what extent do you think your approach affects your ability to recruit and retain teachers? Because, the wonderful curricula that you have, you must need wonderful teachers in order to deliver that.
If I can start, I think that it's really important for the committee to understand that there is a genuine catastrophic crisis in teacher recruitment, and it's not just physics, it's everything. So that's a huge issue for us. So what we do to make sure that our teachers can stay and can to do the best with the young people. At my school, and working with the PTI, we focus on what took them into the classroom in the first place. So the passion for their subject, the passion for their learning. We make sure that we get the best qualified teachers that we can. We train them up ourselves where we can, and we make sure that they have the support to keep on developing their subject learning. And that combined with humane leadership, with as much flexibility as we possibly can give, and an open and transparent leadership within the school where we talk a lot, we debate a lot, we argue a lot. That seems to be able to keep turbulence relatively low. But don't be mistaken, the crisis is real and we're all struggling.
Anybody else want to take on Brandon Garden's question?
I'd just like to echo that recruitment is, acute. It's a real issue, particularly in some of the key areas that we would like to develop more skills for. Design technology, for example, it feels like training has collapsed in that area, and we do not get applicants applying for those jobs, and that can limit the curriculum that you want to offer because you don't have enough teachers. I think that, particularly for our school, and I'm sure it's similar for the other schools here, that actually the curriculum we offer, because it is a bit different, is actually attractive for teachers to want to come and be in the school, and often actually to send their children to the school as well, which is an interesting thing because they want the same opportunities and experiences for their own children. So that does help with recruitment. We've had great success with former students actually, coming back to teach with us as well, which can be another route. And that is something again which I think speaks to the quality of the education when they want to come back into the school themselves. But it is absolutely a significant problem for all head teachers, I would say.
Lord Baker, then Lord Story, then Lord Aberdare, then Lord Watson.
I'm the chairman of the Baker Deering Trust. But first, could I start by congratulating you all? Yes. You're all successes, and you've done it by swimming against the tide. You've not really depended upon much support from the Department of Education or any individual secretaries of state. 27 GCSEs was music to my ears, so much better than Project 8 and e-bac. And your expeditions, I've now learnt about. It's very interesting indeed, your approach. I really wanted to ask Mark something, because I've been working with one of his colleagues. It's a very progressive trust in Hampshire called Phil Avery. And for about a year, we've been working together to create a school on a farm. A farmer is prepared to provide his land and his animals as the basis for an educational institution for the rural economy, which is quite unique. This is such a unique operation. I'd like you to explain it more, please. But the idea, this is not just about milking cows and planting potatoes. If you listen to the Farming Today programme every morning, which I do because I wake up at about 5:30, you find I'm listening to a highly technical activity. They're all talking about computer programs and the latest machinery they've got in and how they're going to improve their crops. And so this school is designed not just to deal with the agriculture and horticulture, but all the technology that goes behind the rural economy. And this is a way in, as it were, to the green world. It's one aspect of it. It doesn't deal with power stations, it doesn't deal with electric cars, but it deals with a lot of the basic start of the green economy. Could you explain something to it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about this, and we see this as the next logical step, really, in where we're going, because we feel that we have reached where we can with the confines of our current system and as much outdoor education as we can offer. But this proposal to create the Bowhunt Sustainable School on a working estate in West Sussex, the Western Estate, for around 500 students is a really great opportunity for them to actually cover most of the content. Above 50% of the content of the GCSEs they would study there would be done in a place-based, land-based curriculum where they would be outside working on the land for large parts of that curriculum, alongside some of our partners, Plumpton Agricultural College as well, the South Downs National Park, with the idea that we are integrating the school on the site of the employment as well. And this goes exactly, as Lord Baker says, beyond just looking at the traditional jobs in the agricultural sector, which is another area where there are quite a lot of shortages at the minute as well, and we need more people in those areas as well, but onto those higher level areas to make a flourishing rural economy where the digital skills that make such a difference to farm productivity, make such a difference to mapping, geographical systems, drone flights, the full range of things that can be done and can be done in this school. And we're really excited about this, and we've had some really good conversations about how we can push this project forward and actually be a template for how this can work in lots of other different parts of the country. But to make this happen, we will need to go with those partners and actually work on that curriculum. And we've got some really exciting ideas for what that curriculum will look like, with all of the students studying up to, they can study up to A-level, they can do technical qualifications there as well, and in just such a different way of learning. Because crucially, another thing that we're really excited about this project is the student engagement. We've been working with Impact Ed around student engagement, and we've been tracking that regularly since before the pandemic. And it will probably be no surprise to members of the committee that student engagement and student well-being has taken a hit, particularly during the pandemic. But we found as the students get closer to those external examinations, well-being can really drop, and that can be a real concern. Whereas our approach with the outdoor learning and the approach with the sustainable school will have the dual benefit of helping fill that skills gap, but also giving the learners that much more engagement in their learning and passion about their learning, which can, with a very traditional GCSE pathway, can fall off.
I did mention this to the Secretary of State 6 weeks ago, and she asked her SPAD to look into it. I've heard nothing since.
Very good. Thank you. Lord Story.
So I'll declare my interests. I am a patron of the Royal Life Saving Society, a patron of Careers Connect, a trustee of Liverpool College and a trustee of summer camps. Thank you. I was really enthused by all your contributions, and I'd love to spend some more time with you actually talking about the work that you do. I thought, Carolyn, your comments about work experience are really, really important, and this committee should take note of those wise words. I wonder, this is not my question, I just want to make this point, I wonder how much it is down to your leadership. I wonder how much of your success in your schools is how you are motivating your staff and them motivating their pupils. And what happens when you move on? Does that leadership carry on? Have you embedded it so successfully that the success of your school will continue? But that wasn't my question. My question is that Sir Charles Mayfield, who you might remember as the former chief executive of John Lewis, who are currently quite a lot in the press, argues that the focus on exams and assessment in education is increasingly at the expense of what employers are really want and really value. And he says that what employers need is resilience, communication and problem solving. Would you agree with that, or would there be something else you'd add to that list? And I'd like you all to answer it, actually. So do you want to start, Carolyn, first? And keep it brief so we can get through all
I think that the focus on exam learning is a big risk if a school then interprets its entire raison d'etre as being the exams. And to go back to your non-question earlier, that's the thing about courageous leadership and experience and having a very clear view about what education is for in your head. And one of the reasons that there is a risk ahead of us is that many younger head teachers, and almost all head teachers are younger than me, many younger head teachers are so focused on performance measures that they can't bring themselves to do anything that's any kind of risk. And so that's an issue.
Thank you. It's a great point that Carolyn raised about what what are schools for? What is the purpose of education in 21st century Britain? And resilience, yes. Problem solving, yes. But again, if we have all of our young people pursuing qualifications that are assessed over 2 years, and it's becoming more about a memory test of what you can remember rather about what you can do and what you're capable of, and how to communicate effectively, how to be compassionate in a society where we've got numerous challenges, and how to pivot, how to be innovative. It's almost as if the demands of the British education system is in total contrast as to why Britain's successful.
Okay. Kate?
Yeah, there's some truth in that.
Well, I agree entirely with my colleagues. I think the current approach to qualifications at 16, where young people are expected to sit in a hall and remember and regurgitate a set of knowledges, is quite frankly ridiculous and not in keeping at all with the skills that they need for life or working life. And I think that if that is the way schools are measured, that is what the focus will become. UTCs don't have Progress 8 and Attainment 8 to live up to. When Ofsted come, that isn't what they're asking for. So they're a little freer, and they can offer a broader curriculum as a result. They also have, on average, a longer school day, so they can fit more in. They can do more, and they can spend more time developing these skills that my colleagues have excellently explained. So an example would be if at Media City, which is a UTC in Salford, the young people will have been set a live brief by a business that wants a game, a VR game, that will help young people understand the challenges they'll face in the streets. So it's a complementary product to a play that the client is putting on. He has given them 6 months. They have to meet that deadline, and they have to show enormous resilience in doing that. The rest of the curriculum does not demand that they stick at something, that they review the product, that they work as a team to make sure that all comes together. It doesn't demand the same outcome, that it's got to be a professional product that can truly be used by the client in schools with young people across the country. They're the sorts of skills that our employers are looking for, and that's why they engage so freely with UTCs and recruit so heavily from them.
Before we get to Mark, can I just jump in and ask you perhaps just to unpack a little bit what you said about not having to observe the Progress 8 framework, and what the consequences of that are for you as a UTC, and how you're perceived in terms of the measures of performance that the government produces?
So when on the DFE website, where people are able to compare schools, then there is some guidance. So the number is still on there, which we really don't like and would rather it wasn't there. But if there is a message to anyone looking that they shouldn't compare UTCs with other schools using these metrics. And crucially, when Ofsted arrive, they are not using those metrics to compare schools. So we do obviously want them to have high academic standards, that we do want them to come out with really great GCSEs and later on post-16 qualifications. But we also are very focused on their technical qualifications, which, because of the way the school system is working and the qualification systems work, sometimes they're not counted. So they're not counted in Progress 8, and they're not counted even when they're coming up with Attainment 8, that total point score for young people, just because of the way the system is working. But our employers, for example, would want our young people to do 3 different engineering qualifications because they serve 3 different parts of the sector, and therefore they get a really good understanding of the engineering sector as a result of their time in Key Stage 4 at UTC. that isn't really the intention of this current qualification system. They would rather, the government, the DFE, would rather they either didn't do an engineering qualification or they did just one. And that isn't what a UTC is. So they will do all three, and they'll do computer science as well to complement that curriculum, and then they'll spend time with employers and doing project work to develop their skills.
Great, thanks for unpacking that. Mark Moran, to continue on Lord Story's question.
Yes, thank you. I agree with large amounts of what my colleagues have said. I think the current system is very one-dimensional, and it assesses, well in that respect, that ability to memorise knowledge and embedding deep knowledge, and there is value in that. I wouldn't want to say there is no value in that at all. But that is where it goes. It's very limited in terms of the full range of human development for what it actually assesses. And there's reasons for that. That is one of the simplest things to assess is how much students can remember. So because it's simple, it's quite easy to assess in some ways. I'd also make the point that on previously I've been fortunate enough to visit Malaysia and China on study tours where I've spoken to head teachers over there and done that kind of exchange. And all of them, without fail, were saying, how do you create in the UK such creative, collaborative thinkers? We really, really want that skill set in our students. And I think exactly as you've heard already today, that there is risk there, that actually we are not fostering that as much as we could. And I think that is something that we should be really mindful of. And the third point I would make is that it's always valuable to look at what's going on in the independent sector. And large parts of the independent sector are now abandoning GCSEs in favour of their own qualifications. And they're doing this so they can have a broader experience for the students, so as they can assess in different ways. And I'm sure we may come on to this later about exactly the mechanics of assessment. But I think that is a fascinating trend. And because of the nature of the accountability system, we do not have that freedom in the state sector in the same way to experiment. And it's really great to hear about the UTC and the ways that they are dealing with that in the current accountability setup. But we don't have that freedom to experiment in the same way. And I think that's a really important point.
Thank you very much. Lord Aberdare.
Thank you. And I'm the chair of a very small music education charity, which I should declare. We've heard 4 very impressive descriptions of ways of creating pathways that suit all pupils, and Lord Baker described it as swimming against the tide. So I suppose my main question is how do you cope with the tide that's flowing in the other direction, as it were, and what does it mean for other schools in terms of how they cope with the current assessments, the GCSEs, Progress 8, which you talk. I mean, UTCs, okay, you've managed to find a way around it, but what does that mean for other schools? And what does it mean for school accountability? Because it seems to me the accountability is very much one-dimensional, as you said. It's very much based on academic measures, such as GCSEs. What sort of measures should there be for the non-academic pathways, all the people who are not well served by the academic measures and who are much needed in terms of the engineering or other practical skills? So that's my main question. I would just also say I hope we will come back to work experience and how we can tackle the challenges that Carolyn mentioned, because it seems to me that is an important element for all schools, and if there are problems there, it would be helpful for this committee to think about how we might address those.
Mm-hmm. So if I can talk about the swimming against the tide question, I talk a good game about this, but it is wearing, and keeping one eye on what Ofsted might want to talk about, who knows what they want to talk about when they come through the door, and keeping an eye on Progress 8 is almost a full-time full-time job. And head teachers have to have the courage of their convictions to be able to argue about what they think is important. So one of the things that we haven't talked about so far to do with GCSE, and I hope that we will, is the fact that it fails about a third of the students, and many of those students are ones who find it really hard to keep a toehold in education through K stage 4. And so we do need to do something about GCSE grading, and we need to do something about how we talk about GCSE grading and how that's how that's measured. The other thing I would say, because I'll stop in a moment, is that my school, for example, we've become an SEN magnet school. So whereas some of the local academy trusts say that they can't meet the needs of children with special educational needs, that means I get them. So about 23% of my student body is on the special needs register in one way or another. That means that my Progress 8 score starts at minus 0.1 in any case, and fluctuates between minus 0.1, minus 0.4. I can live with that because I've been at this for a long time. If I were 20 years younger, I'd be terrified all the time about it, seriously terrified about it all the time. And that makes head teachers leave.
Well, we do have the Progress 8s, Attainment 8s, kind of to the side. We are, however, inspected in the same way, and we still have really high expectations in terms of recruitment. Ofsted is a key pressure, absolutely. And while they will come and we know they've seen the Progress 8, Attainment 8. We know that they have fully analysed the outcomes of the UTC, and they will come with a particular frame of mind. We are working very closely with Ofsted, and they're really a very good partner, and that's because we've really had to educate them. What is a UTC? The vast majority, of course, of inspectors have never been to a UTC and don't really know what it is. So they would come in expecting to see a traditional school and finding a school that doesn't do that, has a very specialist curriculum. And over time, they have become used to looking for the key characteristics, the technical curriculum, the involvement of employers, and they're used now to expecting our young people to speak to them well and to look them in the eye and to expect to be spoken to by strangers as they come in the room. So that has changed, but it's still hugely stressful. And at the moment, we've got UTCs that have been waiting 2, 3, 4 years for Ofsted to come, and the head teachers freely tell me that they spend time rehearsing for the conversation they're going to have with the lead inspector every day on the way to work. It is a terrible level of stress. And being a UTC doesn't remove that. And I thought, Carolyn, you put that really well. You, in terms of the students who arrive and where their starting points, we have a number of young people who will arrive looking for a new place to be educated. They like the small environment. They love the work with employers. They see that we can really help and provide opportunity where maybe the school they've come from could not. And so we invest quite heavily in moving them very swiftly through. So it is, I think we would like to be judged, yes, on maths and English, incredibly important, and on science, on our technical quals, but also on our destinations. So what happens next? Do they go off into sustained employment in the long run? Do they go to it through the most appropriate route for their particular endeavours in terms of their careers? Are they well supported? Do they make the progress in the environment they're in?
Great, thank you. Jamie Foreman.
I think it links to the question about retention and recruitment, that we are swimming against the tide, and some people are thinking, well, this isn't for me anymore. Teaching, for me, is the best, and for us guys, I'm sure it's the best job in the world. It is a vocation. The fact that I get paid sometimes to teach kids, I feel really lucky. However, for many, the accountability on school leaders filters down through the organisation to subject leaders, to teachers, and It's making good people make decisions that they wouldn't necessarily do. For instance, guiding or directing children to follow a curriculum path around the e-bac subjects instead of what they would naturally flourish in is a heartbreaking situation in our schools. My daughter's about to start secondary school. I hope that doesn't happen in the school where she's going to go, because that I believe in schools. But how about accountability measures that are designed around supporting the needs of the kids that go to the school, or the needs of the community, or the needs of the country, or dare I say it, the needs of the world that we live in?
Very interesting.
I've got a number of. Did you want to quick come back?
Just a comment. First of all, I think we've got four exceptional speakers, and part of my challenge, concern, is how do the majority of schools and heads cope with all these kinds of pressures? I mean, you're really standing up to them and finding a way through. So that would be a question. And I wanted to raise the e-bac, which Jamie mentioned, but I hope we think about the impact of that as well. Well, thank you very much.
Great. I have a number wanting to come in. Lord Baker, I'm going to come back to you shortly, but first, Lord Watson, Baroness Blower and Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of the contributors here. It's been really fascinating. I've quite a lot of questions. I'll distill them down. I do want to speak about Ofsted. Maybe we'll come to that later. But for the moment, Lord Aberdeen mentioned the e-bac. My questions really are, firstly, to all four of you. I've got three of them, really. What do you think of the e-bac, and to what extent is it operated in your schools? Secondly, on GCSEs, if I am quoting him accurately, let me just see here. I did notice Jamie's comment. We ask students if they feel they are ready for their GCSEs. So on GCSEs, how effective are they? Some of you have commented on this already to some extent. How effective are they as a measure? Are they, as Jamie, again, one of your colleagues said when giving evidence to the Lord's Youth Unemployment Committee 2 years ago, that they're not fit for purpose? I think there's more than a few, and I'm one of them, share that view. Could I have your general views on GCSEs? And the last one is really about in terms of the pandemic and the effect on education of children missing so much. To what extent do you, all four of you use the National Tutoring Programme, and how worthwhile do you feel it has been?
Okay, the e-bac was an answer to a particular problem in 2010. So because of the accountability measures up to that point, things had gone a bit skewed. Head teachers were doing odd things with their curriculum to meet the performance measures at the time, and so it needed resetting. What it didn't need was for this very tight level 2 qualification basket. Now, I'm a great believer that any child of any ability has the entitlement to study those subjects, and we do that. But for a child who is a slow acquirer of learning, it's a deadly experience if that's all you do in school. Yeah. And that means that they're frustrated, they behave badly, they drop out, they stop coming to school. It makes teachers' lives really hard. What we need is a much broader view of what an educated young person looks like, that enables children who love exams to do those, and children who need to learn in a different way to do that. And we need to find a way of measuring that. We need to find a way of inspecting that. So that's the e-bac. GCSEs. I'm not against GCSEs. I'm just against the way that we use the results of them. That's the issue, because that excludes the learning of so many young people who could do so much better in school. And in terms of the pandemic, we are up against it every day in terms of attendance and in terms of behaviour, and especially in terms of attendance and behaviour for those young people whose attachment to learning was pretty flaky to start with before it started, now have an idea, and their families have an idea, that one day school stops and you don't have to go to school, and you don't have to do as you're told, and you don't have to go into class, and you don't have to learn. So we are up against it, and it will take at least 5 more years before that's over with. But schools are struggling with that.
Very interesting.
Baroness Blow.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I do apologise for my late arrival. I had a question about prisoner education in the chamber, which is very interesting.
Sorry, Baroness, I beg your pardon. I'm just going to hold you there because Lord Watson wanted others to come in.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I apologise.
I'll go. Just speaking to Lord Watson's point about GCSEs in general, I think there is a real question to be asked about GCSEs in general. We've had raising the participation age now to 18, so students do go all the way through to 18. I think we need to look at the fitness for purpose for a system where they take so many exams. We're talking dozens and dozens of exams they will take in quite a short period of time in the next few months, the May-June exam window, and what that actually does to some of our young people. And we've spent a bit of time talking about the unintended consequences around school leadership behaviour, around gaming, narrowing the curriculum, off-rolling, those types of behaviour, which we cannot condone at all, but is I think a bit of a result of some of the accountability measures that we've already discussed earlier. And I think another point to talk about is the forgotten third of students who, after 12 years of education, can come away with a grade 1, 2 or 3 that is deemed a fail, and where do they go next? And we know they have to do a resit, which, there's arguments for and against them continuing to study maths and English. I completely understand that. But the results of those resits are very weak as well. Only about 20-25% of them will actually achieve that standard at that time anyway. So I think there's a real argument for looking at stage and not age, because we do this in so many areas of our life, don't we? We take a driving test when we're ready, when we've practiced, and we're at that point, and we've amassed what we need to do that. And it would be quite a radically different system, but I think it is a good question to ask.
Yeah, I would add to that. We see the UTC education as a 4 to 5 year period of time where they develop at different rates. Yes, they have to sit the same exams that everybody else has to sit. They don't have to do the e-bac, which is a good thing. But now even our vocational qualifications at GCSE level have been constrained quite heavily and involve exams and just a piece of coursework set by an exam board, so it's not necessarily relevant. So yes, our BTECs, for example, have really lost a lot of the joy, and we really have to be quite creative to make sure that they retain some of their essence. So yes, we agree it is a longer process than that. We would love to have, and we incorporate to some extent, for example, digital badges. So they do professional qualifications in Microsoft Office packages, and then they can add those to their digital CV. So we have a large number of UTCs, and they try all different things. So we have Skills Builder, for example. We have Created also. We're all working in different UTCs, finding ways to record experiences and success, and so that young people can see they are successful, even if they sit that final exam and they're not very well, or they had to miss some school because they were ill, or because they're a carer, or for the multitude of other ways that a proportion of our young people are disadvantaged or underserved by our education system. And the pandemic, we all know, has made that much worse. The gap is much greater than it was before. The UTCs and other schools worked incredibly hard to fill the tech gap, to provide the internet and a device so they can access it during lockdowns, for example. But those who were underserved already are even more so now, and they have missed a lot of school, and they're finding it very hard to catch up. We are still, though, when Ofsted comes, judged on the same criteria in terms of attendance. So even if they had got into the habit of not going to school before they arrive at a UTC, when they arrive, we are expected to get them up to that 95% target in the 18 months we have with them before their GCSEs occur. So it is a real challenge.
Thank you. Mark, Clement.
So when I think about the e-bac, I think it's suitable for some students. It's not for all. I think it's, in summary, I think it's anachronistic. I don't think it's suitable for 2023 as a cornerstone of an educational policy. I think it lacks ambition. I think as a country and as the amount of talented people that we've got working in schools, it lacks ambition. The GCSE measures, I think they are effective for their intended purpose of measuring academic ability.
Memory.
Pardon?
Measuring memory.
Measuring academic ability and memory. I think they are effective for that. But they aren't effective for the forgotten third that we've talked about. Now, so I'm from Barnsley, I work in South Yorkshire, work in Doncaster. Mark my words, guys, there is an underclass developing in this country.
Everywhere.
There is an underclass developing that needs a stake in our society. And education, for me, and for many of us, was the route to achieve that ambition and to achieve that stake. And that's what our ambition should be for our education system. Something that's fit for purpose for everybody. Because if we can figure out some of the challenges that we're facing nationally, around threats in Eastern Europe and the massive consequences and challenges around that, we can figure this out. It's about will, and we know where that will resides. It's here.
Great, thank you. Baroness Blower, sorry to interrupt you earlier.
And I apologise. I don't actually have any interest to declare, but for the sake of being clear, I was General Secretary of the National Union of Teachers, and I was also the President and leader of all of the education unions at European level. So I'm not going to ask you about GCSEs, even though I was going to, but I think it's true that even Ofqual thinks that they're only accurate to within 2 grades. So frankly, that begs the question about why we bother to do them at all. I thought that what you said, Carolyn, about younger and less experienced heads being risk averse is so important, because if you're working, you know, if you've got lots of experience and you've worked in a school for a long time and the school is successful and continuing to be successful, then you probably have much less to fear from Ofsted. But if you're in a school that's on an even keel but maybe not absolutely, and is concerned with the kinds of things that Jamie was talking about how can we engage these kids for whom education is less obvious, then it seems to me that you're bound to be risk averse and you're bound to fear Ofsted arriving every day. So and by the way, I'm delighted that you talked up teaching, Jamie, because I have to say in the 30 odd years that I did it, I thought it was a fabulous job. Is there one kind of general area or one thing that you could say about the system of accountability, about the way in which we could change the system of accountability in order to make it not, you know, the kind of terror that it is at the moment, but also to make it more understandable to the school? Part of it would obviously be about providing support rather than just damnation. But also to remember that in lots of countries, they don't have that kind of system. And particularly in Finland, for example, they talk a lot more about responsibility rather than accountability. And I think that speaks to teacher agency and, you know, and teacher trust if you talk about responsibility rather than accountability. So one kind of small way in which you think we could change the system that would be so much better for your own school, but also for all schools.
I think it's perfectly reasonable for the state to want to inspect its schools. But we do it very, very cheaply, and therefore what we get out of it are very cheap measurements. What we need to spend much more money on it. Inspection should be much longer, there should be longer trail, they should work with the school, there should be more professional inspectors, and once issues have been worked with the school, if a team of inspectors is there for 2 or 3 weeks, you identify the issues, and then their professional expertise is used to help the school work out what to do next. The problem with doing it on the cheap is that it's talked about as if these reports that we get are what parents want because they're short and easy to read. Parents are perfectly capable of reading longer reports, and what they're offered in the Ofsted reports that they get is a snapshot which is so inaccurate of the wholeness of school life. We need to replicate the complexity of school life in what the inspection service does.
Thank you.
Did you want anyone else to answer there?
I agree with regards to schools and school leaders accept accountability in terms of inspection. Of course they do. Billions of pounds spent. We've discussed about the level of accountability and the pressures associated with that are just unrealistic and they're unsustainable. They are unsustainable. Unfortunately, the process is summative rather than formative. So it's about pure judgment. Ofsted say they're a force for school improvement. That's nonsense.
There's no evidence for that.
That is nonsense. The publication of a few subject reports every so often and some research does not warrant stating that they are a force for school improvement, because they're not. So wouldn't it be great if it was a partnership of with, this is what you're doing well, this is what we've discussed, and we'll publish this, that's not working so well, and we're going to come back after a period of time and say, if you go to Carolyn's school, Carolyn's got some subject leaders there that'll work with you, and they've got idea X, Y and Z to help you to do that. So that would be my one suggestion of, instead of just summative, formative, this isn't what's quite working well, we've got some people here to help you to do it, we'll come back after a period of time to see how you're getting on.
Thank you. Kate Ambrosio, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, so two things. My first inspection was nearly a week long. And they did have time to really see what that school was about and to really get to know it. And it was very stressful, don't get me wrong, but they really did get under the skin of the school, and they did report on it in a really effective manner. And there were, strengths and weaknesses, and there was area for development. And I agree entirely. There are other schools that can help, and it can be a really proactive and improving method. And as Carolyn said, if you do it on the cheap, which is absolutely what we're doing, then you get a box-ticking exercise where you really don't get a sense of what's going on in the school, and they really aren't very useful for parents at all when making decisions. Then the second thing is we're accountable for what we're measured on. So if you measure on a set of GCSEs or particular GCSEs and their results, and they are going to be examined in the way they're examined, then that will be the focus of that school, at least for the last 12 months, probably for longer. My daughter is in year 10. She has been practicing for her GCSE history paper since she started year 10. Yeah. And it's quite remarkable to watch it happen in a school that I chose. And I really thought, this is a great school. And I'm very informed about schools. And yet I'm watching her become less engaged with history over time, not more engaged, because she's been being prepared for an exam, and the school is, of course, worried about how it's going to be judged on those exam results.
Great, thank you. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I want to ask some questions about engineering. I should declare my interest. I'm an emeritus professor of engineering at Cambridge University, a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Royal Society. And I co-chair the all-party parliamentary engineering group. And I'm really interested in what you were saying earlier, Kate, about destination. My first question is, the UTCs, roughly what proportion of the young people leave and join companies directly as apprentices, and what proportion go on to higher education? So that's my first question, but linked to that is, in your interaction with employers, engineering employers particularly, do they place more emphasis on creativity or on numeracy? And is that changing your views of the curriculum and how you teach the young people?
Thank you. They're two very interesting questions. We're 24% go into apprenticeships, and just under half went to university this time round, which the number, that's back to our pre-pandemic levels. That's where we were then. Different UTCs have a different makeup there. So our health UTCs tend to go into university because there are very few apprenticeship routes available for entry-level students, so when they leave UTCs. In engineering, on the other hand, we have UTCs where 60-80% are going straight into apprenticeships with their local business partners. So it's much more, the sector is much more engaged in that. They do, however, like a university degree, and so we have degree apprenticeships as our dominant route also. So 72%, I think, go on to a degree apprenticeship, which of course means they're running through, that it's a really highly pressured way to do things. They're employed and doing a degree. We have a number now at the Dyson Institute, and Dyson are working very closely with us because they like our students, and they're prepared for the world of work already, and for that to study engineering at that higher level. The maths creativity, in fact, we have kind of a maths creativity and actual ability to use machines split. So Dyson, for example, they want A-level maths, and it needs to be a top grade at A-level maths. And then alongside that, STEM qualifications at the top grades. And they would say you need a top grade in A-level maths in order to do a degree in engineering. Then in the Midlands, we have a UTC that serves the car industry. We have two different degree apprenticeships, actually both at Warwick University, but one of them requires an A-level in maths and one does not. And the one that does not, is more interested in young people who can do the engineering, are technician engineers. The one that wants maths is more of a theoretical engineering. A much more Bristol University or Warwick University, who also wants very high-level maths skills. So therefore, we have to be very careful with how we teach and advise our young people. So are they heading into a degree or a degree apprenticeship which requires them to have those tool-using skills? Do they need to know how to do those things? They do need a good level of maths. It's always the way, but they also need, of course, literacy skills on top of that, and creativity. Or are they going to go off to the Russell Group universities, who are still largely asking for an A-level in maths at a top grade, or indeed particular degree apprenticeships that are asking for the same thing? So that's why it made me smile, actually, your question, because it is a thing that we are currently grappling with. The UTCs are dealing with it day in, day out. How do you prepare a young person for the route they want to go down if they are not going to get a top grade at A-level maths? So we provide other routes. We do core maths, for example, Lee UTC in Dartford. Everybody does a maths qualification post-16. Everybody continues because their employers have said they need maths. They don't necessarily need an A in A-level maths, but they do need higher level maths, and they continue with it as a result.
There is also a difference between maths and numeracy, isn't there?
Yes, very much.
Huge difference.
Unless others want to come in on this one, I'm going to go to Lord Baker and then Lord Lexton and then Baroness Evans. Lord Baker.
Well, very briefly, it's been wonderful listening to you, I must say. I hope you're all part of a glorious future. But one thing I particularly picked up from what Caroline said about in her school, which is a very large school, there's a lot of absenteeism and a lot of handling. How do you deal with disengaged 13 and 14-year-olds? Behaviour becomes an enormous problem. And you, Jamie, spoke of the underclass the first time we've heard that. I think we are creating an underclass. My question is quite simple. I think you'd all agree that Progress 8, e-bac should go, and even Progress 8 should go. And various proposals have been put to us in committees that we've drawn attention to, that the curriculum is a big ship to change the steering of. Big ship, difficult. Where do you start? And one proposal could be that you could abandon e-bac and Progress 8 and go for Progress 5, that all schools should do English, maths, 2 sciences and data skills. And then it's up to you to decide, as the heads, what you want to do. Do you think that's the start? You've got to start somewhere. And the reluctance of the department to ever move is very, very great. So one's got to find an open door somewhere. Do you think that could be an open door?
I think that could be an open door, and making it smaller is sensible. There's an argument to make it even smaller, and that's to judge schools on maths, English and science, to just leave it at that. Because one of the risks with Progress, with as it were Progress 5, is how it's used in performance tables. Is there a risk that some schools might shrink their curriculum even more to 5 subjects with no arts, with no humanities? Yes. You know, there's a real risk of that, because head teachers respond to where the risks are with Ofsted and with the tables. We need to completely abolish performance tables.
Who else wants to come in? Amy Portman or Kate Abruzzi or Mark?
I agree with the sentiments that Carolyn's just spoken about. There's always the risk of narrowing that curriculum because of those performance measures, but we need to think really carefully about just the strength and weight of that accountability, because it makes good people make decisions that they wouldn't necessarily make. And for me, it's all about context. I think that's a better idea of the 5, and then the rest of the business of helping kids could continue, helping them move in a path that's suitable for them, as well as those basic ones.
Yes, well, I think a real opportunity from a system like a 5 system is to allow space in the timetable for other things to happen. That would have to be married with intelligent accountability, so you didn't get schools that just became 5 subject schools. I think that's a very strong point. I think really fundamentally, and going back to Baroness Blower's point, you know, what is the one thing to say that could change the system is around that narrowness of the current GCSE assessment. You know, it does test that one skill. If we can find a way, and there are lots of experiments and lots of countries that are doing this, where we broaden that and actually look at assessing more than just that memorisation at GCSE, I think that would unlock lots of different things. Because I think head teachers wouldn't actually mind, again, being held accountable for a much broader basket of students' abilities and the ways they flourish in the schools, and being held accountable for that would be very fair, I think, for head teachers. But I think the ultimate problem is that assessment system has become very one-dimensional, as I mentioned earlier.
Kate and Bruce, did you want to add anything on that?
Yes, only that I don't think the majority of head teachers wouldn't want to narrow the curriculum down to 5, but I agree in terms of an accountability model that's smaller would be helpful. It allows then for a more purpose-built curriculum, which isn't focused in such a way. And there are multiple ways of assessing that we could be assessing different skills, different expertise. We can be recording what the young people achieve over a longer period of time. We can be giving them different... we also don't have to do that by the time they're 16. We could do that at a later point. So we're not saying, oh, at 16 you didn't get this, therefore you failed, right, off you go into something we maybe don't value as highly. So, yes, I think it's a good idea to narrow down.
Great, thank you very much. Lord Lexton, then Baroness Evans.
Declaration of interest. President of the Independent Schools Association. Mark has referred to the freedom to experiment that independent schools possess. How should a freedom to experiment be extended to schools as a whole? You've all said a fair amount about this already, but I wonder, summarise your views perhaps briefly on that?
I think it's been really eye-opening for all four of us here on this panel as witnesses today to listen to each other, actually, because I think it is quite incredible how much experimentation you can get in the constraints of the present system. I think that it does go back to the accountability system, because obviously there is no rule written to say we cannot do this qualification with our students, but because it's not recognised in the accountability system, that disincentivises schools from doing it completely. So I think we absolutely need to start there. I think the experimentation should look international as well. I've talked a little bit about international comparisons, and I think we're not having to do this on our own. I think we can look internationally and see where best practice is. We've mentioned Finland today, we've mentioned other countries where they are really being very innovative and getting some absolutely fabulous results as a result of that.
Thank you.
Yes, I think the private sector has been able to try different things, been able to try different qualifications, but also a different approach. So they are able to try different approaches to digital skills, for example. In UTCs, we have over 50% of young people doing digital qualifications. But they are stuck with the qualifications they are given, and some of them are not very innovative or creative, and they are driving down the number of young people overall in the country who are doing digital skills. In the private sector, they're doing more enterprise technology, they're basing it more broadly, they're spending more time on it. I know they still have trouble recruiting, but obviously they pay higher salaries and have longer holidays, which is helpful. But they can all access different qualifications, such as the IGCSE, where they still do a broader range of assessment methods in English, for example, testing more of the skills that will be useful in life. So I think there is a lot we can learn from the private sector.
Thank you.
I think it's about giving permission to have freedom to experiment. I think schools under academies and ours are free schools, we have got the ability to increase inset days if we want to. We don't have to do the national curriculum. We've got lots of different freedoms from that perspective. But many school leaders would see that as a risk too far to do something that's outside of their comfort zone. So why would they do that? Why would they do that? In our schools at XP, we have teachers we have standards that we have to meet in terms of the national curriculum and in terms of the academic achievement. But can you imagine the excitement of geeky teachers like us having the freedom to be able to create an expedition that could bring in local employers, going field work, and have a final product where kids present their learning? That permission, that freedom is there, but it's a big risk for a lot of people, and it's almost like the school leaders need that ability to be able to pay the mortgage but be able to sleep at night, which is, I've got to keep my job, but I also need that intrinsic feeling that I'm doing good for our kids.
The one thing we haven't talked about, funding. I can't make next year's budget balance, and as schools are squeezed, everything innovative will fall out of them.
Great, thank you. Baroness Hamilton.
I think this is not necessarily for Kate, because you've got a different model, but for our other three panellists. Obviously, you seem to work very closely with your employees. You've all talked about how they've involved in your curriculum, and you obviously make a huge effort to do it. But I wonder, how easy have you actually found developing the relationships with the employers in your area and kind of involving them in the way you have? And what more could the business community and them do to help you and the school system? So it's not you saying, oh, we don't have the skills, etc. What more could come your way rather than you having to go out?
It's not particularly easy because schools have timetables, schools have structures that we work within, and it's a hostage to fortune depending on where you are and who you've got locally. My first headship was in Hartlepool, and we didn't have much to choose from there. So it isn't easy.
I would say that the employers that we've spoken to have all been very keen to be involved and actually have been really happy to give up time and expertise and come in and talk to us, and we've gone and spoken to them about how we do this. So that's been very positive. But I do think that in terms of building those links, it does take time, and it does very dependent on your local area and your local, what is happening there. And I think that, it's fine for it to be ad hoc, but we need it much more than that. So I would absolutely encourage business to actually lobby government around some of the things we've been talking about here around assessment and what the skills they want, and be very clear that if those people are arriving to their door at 18 or whatever age it might be to look at their qualifications and they're not got the skills they want, then it's business's responsibility to get involved with that as well and lobby as well.
Interesting. We don't have any challenges getting local businesses in. I think when we show them the quality of the work that the kids are producing, artwork, books, performances, whatever that might be, we find that people who are interested in the job that they do, they will happily come into school and talk about it, and more importantly, they do it for free. We have loads of experts from businesses come in and they never charge us any money. They just enjoy talking to the kids about architecture, computer design, working on rail depots, designing Azuma trains. They come in because that's our enthusiasm for it.
Can I add, it is an ongoing cost as well. So that point that Carolyn made about funding, so there's if you offer a specialist curriculum, it costs more. If you want employers to be engaged in the curriculum, you need a person who really works hard on doing that, maintains those relationships. If that person moves on, or the person in the business moves on, remakes the relationship, make that sustainable. If I could ask anything more of employers, and we do ask an awful lot, I admit, it would be maybe we could build some sort of system where their expertise is more a part of the general education system. So it is a lot to ask. I know there's a shortage of engineers, a shortage of computer scientists, and therefore there is a shortage of teachers doing that. So we need a regular input from them. In UTCs we are benefiting from that, but we'd like that to be seen everywhere.
Great. We're starting to run out of time, but can I ask perhaps each witness to give us a final thought that could include a single recommendation that you would most like to see come out of our work? Who wants to start? Kate, yeah.
So we have a model that I referred to in my opening statement, which is the UTC sleeve. So we have an example of it in Bristol at the moment, so a full comprehensive school with a part of it becoming a UTC. So they benefit from the relationship with employers, from the way of learning, from the not having to do e-bac and Progress 8 and so on, not applying as they run up through their school. And then they get the same kind of experience without having to build a full new technical school. They would need specialist teachers, they would need specialist equipment, but what we'd seek to do is to use a UTC, a local UTC, to support them to do that and implement that system. So that would just increase the number of young people who can access the employer-led curriculum that we have in mind.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Mark?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to rethink the GCSE assessment system at age 16. The current exam system drives so many unintended consequences and really doesn't allow space, I think, for students to really show what they know and what they can do. So I think anything we can do to do that by bringing in more project qualifications, interdisciplinary learning, micro-credentials, any of those things we can do. There's so many ways to assess students in our schools. And we pick one way, and that one way I wouldn't want to get rid of completely, but we only do one thing, and I think we need to broaden that.
Great, thank you. Jamie, Portman?
I'd like to use this opportunity to suggest a complete review and redefine the purpose of education in the United Kingdom in 2023 and the 21st century onwards. I think we need to be much more ambitious for the needs of our kids and our local communities. We have the people to deliver what we need in our schools, and I think we need to redefine what it is that we would like to achieve.
Thank you very much. Rob's last word to you.
Sort out teacher recruitment, teacher retention, teacher pay.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for a fantastic session. Very grateful to you for giving up your time. Thank you.
Good to be invited.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Thank you all.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.